This story is called Back in the Day. So, when I say back in the day, I'm talking about the 1960s and the 1970s, during that period of time. So, here we go. I have talked about this in an earlier question, and when I did my memoirs, a lot of my memoirs were answering questions that was asking me, and this one here is about one of these questions. And the question is about the difference of how kids are raised today versus when I was young. So that's what this paper is about. And I'm going to expand on this topic even more here. Now, the first television I ever watched was a black and white only. There's no color, just black and white. And the TV's electronics was vacuum tubes. So when you turned on the TV, it had to warm up first before it would start playing. You had to wait. You don't have any instant TV. And our radio also had vacuum tubes. And when you turn it on, it had to warm up before it would start playing also. Now our black and white TV was like a box. And it had knobs on it because you had to adjust your set from time to time. And you had knobs adjusting the horizontal and the vertical. You could adjust the brightness and the contrast. And you had a knob for VHF channels, which are channels 2 through 13. And the most channels we ever had was 3 channels, not like today. And the pictures on these TV sometimes were very snowy and may not be clear. Now, if you had an antenna, you could adjust your antenna to get a better signal. And I think our antenna was actually on top of our house, but they had some antennas you could put on top of TV. And another thing, there was no such thing as a remote control. So you was always battling the vertical, you either have the TV to go flip up, the picture, you'd have to adjust the vertical so it would stay at one spot and stop moving around, or the horizontal, all this stuff. So I think you seem to always be adjusting something on that TV. And another thing about TV, in the beginning, the telephone shows were live. There was no pre-recorded stuff. It was live. So whatever happened live was what you saw. It was funny because you never knew what would happen to the entertainers when things just didn't go right. Another thing is you didn't have TV 24 hours a day. It would begin at 7 o'clock in the morning with the Star Spangled Banner, and it'd go off at midnight with the national anthem. And the TV would have a test pattern before coming on or going off at night. And I think when it did go off the air, you just had a snowy screen with a random noise. Also, we didn't have any kind of means of recording a TV show. It didn't exist. And in the beginning, they didn't have reruns. There's no reruns. It was all live. First time that show, you know. And if you were watching a TV show that came on once a week, you had to wait an entire week to see the next episode. This was with all the shows. Just like watch Batman. Stay tuned for next week. Same bat channel, same bat time. You had to wait a whole week to see the next episode. Okay, let's jump over here. Our Cokes and soft drinks. There was always glass bottles. Coke bottles always had on the bottom of the bottle the name of the city and the state, indicating the bottle and franchise. So all the soda machines were built to dispense these glass Coke bottles. And you'd always pick the bottom, look, see what city it was, and on the bottom. Another thing is when you go to the service station to get gas, you didn't pump your own gas. The people who worked at the gas station would come over to your car and you'd tell them how much gas you wanted. Fill her up. I need 5 gallons, $5 worth, whatever it is. And while they're filling up the gas tank, they'd wash your windows, they'd check your oil, check the tire pressure. They also had a little garage to put your car in if they had to do further work on it. Not like today, right? Telephones. Telephones were rotary dial, and you were stuck by the phone while you talked unless you had a long extension cord. So these phones, they plug into the wall, depending on how long that cord is, right? Remember at our house, we had a phone in the hallway of all places. We had a long little hallway, and there was a deal built in the wall you could set the phone on. I think our other phone was in my parents' bedroom. Don't think we maybe had one in the kitchen too, possibly later. Anyway, so if you had to talk on the phone, you were stuck where that phone was. And the only way you could get away from the phone is if you had a long extension cord, then you could stretch that, maybe possibly stretch that cord and maybe get further away from that phone. And then you also had a phone directory where you could look up people's names and addresses and you could find their phone number. And there were no cell phones at all. Computers did not exist. No video games, no such thing ever existed. And another little tidbit here is there were no trash bags. You either had to line the trash can with newspapers. It seemed like everybody got a newspaper. I'm sure not everybody, but most people got a newspaper delivered in the morning or at whatever. So you use newspapers to line the trash can, or you put a brown paper bag in the trash can. When you go grocery shopping, they put your groceries in a brown paper bag, and you bring that bag home, and you can stick that in the trash can, and the trash is full. I guess you pull that bag out, right? And there were no Ziploc sandwich bags. Sandwich bags that we had were not resealable. I think I remember you put a sandwich in a sandwich bag, you kind of somehow flip it to where it kind of folds over or something, or folds in. I don't remember exactly. But Ziploc bags, no. We had no dishwashers at all. You had to manually do the dishes. You had two sinks. On the left, you had a sink of soapy water, and on the right, you had a sink with hot water to rinse. Then you had a plastic dish holder, and you had to dry the dishes by hand. I remember that sink where you rinse the dishes was so scalding hot. We'd have them so hot, you couldn't leave your hand in the water very long, and you'd burn it off, burn your hand. So you had to reach, especially at silverware that drops down the bottom, you have to reach down at the bottom and pull it out real fast. It was sanitized, I guarantee you. Nothing could live in that water. We had no clothes dryers. We had to hang our clothes outside with clothespins on the clotheslines. And I remember we had a clothesline in the backyard where we'd hang those clothes. During the bad weather, we would use various methods inside the house. We had some wooden device that had rods that would attach, that extend. So you had it on a stand or something, and these rods you pull out, and these rods would extend out, and you hang your jeans and whatever on all that to dry. Our refrigerator did not have automatic defrost at all. And every so often you'd have to manually defrost the freezer section with hot water and a knife. And the reason you had to manually defrost, there was so much ice in the freezer. The ice covered up so much, there was no room to put anything else in the freezer. So what's the use of a freezer if you couldn't put anything in it? So the ice would accumulate. So from time to time, you'd have to open that freezer door and let all that stuff thaw out. And you'd speed it up with that hot water and chip it off with a knife. And then let's go to the air conditioner next. There was a swamp cooler. We didn't have central air conditioner like there is today. And the swamp cooler was on the roof. And it would draw in the air and pass through water-soaked pads. And then the blower would come cool the home. And we only had one duct in the house, which is in the living room. And I remember laying on the floor right beneath that duct, letting that cool air blow over me. And there's only two speeds to that swamp cooler, low speed and high speed. So the only really cool place in the house during the summer would be right underneath that where the air's blowing down. And for the winter, we had a furnace that was located under the house. Now our furnace was right to the end, was kind of in a hallway, right to the entrance of the bathroom. Mind you, we only had one bathroom, family of 5. Kind of guess how that went. So back to the furnace. Each winter, I can still recall the process of lighting the furnace that was on the floor right in front of the bathroom in the hallway. We would take a wire clothes hanger that was stretched out long enough to go through this hole, and at the end of this wire, the wire was bent with a small little loop on the end, large enough to where you could insert a wooden match in that little hole. You'd light that match, And then you stick that wire coat hanger down into the furnace. And you'd light and put that wire through the hole and gas burner, and then it would turn on and light up, and you were all set. There was a metal grating on the floor covering the furnace. And I remember many times I would straddle over this furnace just to feel its warmth. You know, on those cold days, the really warm place in the house was standing over top of that furnace. And I would just straddle that furnace just to feel the warmth. And during the winter, we'd also dry our clothes by hanging our clothes on this wooden device that I was talking about earlier that was designed for clothes. And thinking about this furnace reminded me of the times that I crawled underneath the house through this small hole from our backyard. You didn't have much room to crawl beneath the house, but you could reach the furnace with this access. Of course, you're crawling in the dirt, and you'll be worried about the spiders and everything else you could imagine that might be living underneath that house. And like I was saying before, our 5 people in our family shared that one bathroom. And we lived in a home that was only 1,300 square feet with a detached garage with a big backyard. And being a kid, I didn't think that this was small at all. Today, I would consider this small. Can you imagine running into problems by just using this one bathroom? Oh, many a time that you had to go to the bathroom, but there was someone in there already. What's your alternative? Go outside, go in the backyard, go to the bathroom out there. That occurred more than once, for sure. So this kind of gives you some example of what it was like. You know, I think there's many other things I can think of, but like a car. All our cars did not have electric windows, for example. You had to manually roll them up or manually roll them down. Try to think, I'm not so sure about air conditioners. They may or may not have an air conditioner. I guess depending on the car you had. I remember riding around many times with the window down, so I think we called, depends on what kind of car you had. If you had a 4-door, and all four windows were open, they call 440 air conditioning. 440 means 4 windows with going at 40 miles an hour. Anyway, but that's the end of this story of back in the day.